Hi, this is Father John Stang, and this is a recap video of the seventh and final session of our discernment group that we've been having this fall. We've been walking through St. Ignatius of Loyola's rules for discernment, and we've talked a lot about different things throughout these last several sessions. We've talked about God's love for us. We talked about how we're called to reverence, praise, and serve the Lord in all that we do. We talked about the differences between spiritual consolation and spiritual desolation and what we do when we encounter those two things in our lives. We've talked about how to discern big discernment decisions, especially vocational discernment decisions, through the three modes of discernment. And so a lot of different things to be able to ponder, and hopefully different tools that you can take with you since these sessions. And what I wanted to talk about a little bit today is just some practical stuff. Remember that all discernment ends in a decision. And so, especially with big discernment decisions, if we make a decision, we have to then begin the process towards that decision. And so I want to talk about what happens when we're discerning priesthood and what that process looks like if a guy wants to go to seminary, for example, or if somebody is discerning holy matrimony with someone else. What does that process look like? So I'll just briefly describe those two things. So first of all, if a guy is discerning priesthood and decides, okay, I think God is calling me to be a priest and I'd like to go to the seminary to be able to learn more about that, how do I do that? The first thing is that every diocese has what's called a vocation director, someone who's in charge of that application process. In our diocese, I'm the director of priestly vocation promotion, which means that I'm in charge of that process for our diocese. So what would happen is you would reach out to me, and then we would begin the process. So there's an application that is on the diocese website, kind of like a college application that you would fill out. Has a lot of family history, kind of personal information, just some essays that you would write just to get your thoughts on some things. There's some recommendations, both from your pastor and also maybe a general recommendation. There's also some different interviews that you would go through. So we have usually a diocesan committee of people that would interview you. You would talk to me probably more than once. Bishop John Brungard, who's our bishop for the Diocese of Dodge City, he would also meet with you as well. And so then there would also be some evaluations that you would do, both a physical examination and a psychological evaluation. And then once all that's completed and you've submitted it, then you would go ahead and the diocese would make a decision whether to accept you or not as a seminarian. And then if the diocese says yes, they will accept you, then you would begin the application process to a seminary. And that's going to depend on the level of education that you have. So you might go to a college seminary, for example. Conception Seminary College is an example of that, Conception, Missouri, where one of our seminarians, Jonathan Lemos, goes. And then, or if you have college or a lot of your college completed, then you would go to what's called a major seminary. And so, for example, Deacon Carson Hopt goes to Kendrick Glennon Seminary in St. Louis. I went to St. John Vianney Theological Seminary in Denver. So there's different options that you would have to go to, depending on the choice of the diocese. And the application process overall takes about 3 to 4 months, probably closer to 4 months or longer, to be able to do all of those things. But that's what would happen if a guy decided that he wanted to go to seminary. Once a guy is in seminary, depending on, again, their level of education, it can take 7 to 9 years. Closer to 9 if a guy doesn't have a lot of college or is just out of high school. And so you would do things like what they call a propedeutic year or a spirituality year, which is 1 year of retreat and discernment, with kind of building on your life of prayer. You also would do a couple of years of what's called pre-theology or philosophy studies. They call that the discipleship phase. Then you would do 4 years of theology studies, where you would take classes on different areas of theology and scripture, and just and all the sacraments have a class, and that's called the configuration stage, and that's 4 years. And then finally, you at the end of your final year, you would be ordained to the transitional diaconate, and then finish. This is changing a little bit, but you would basically do that your final year of seminary. And this sounds like a lot, 7 to 9 years. That's a long time. But really, you're being formed spiritually, humanly, pastorally, and academically into the man God is calling you to be, and that just takes a lot of time. Now, if a guy goes to seminary and discerns, okay, well, I thought God was calling me to the priesthood, but I think after I've been here, I realize maybe he's not. That's okay. You're always free to leave seminary at any time to be able to pursue something else. It happens quite often. I had guys in my class that I started out with, some got ordained like I did, and there were others who didn't. And so that's a very normal part of the process. If someone is discerning to get married, there's also there's a process that they have to follow. It doesn't take quite as long as getting ordained to the priesthood, but what would happen is the both the man and the woman who are discerning marriage would come and meet with the priest. They would do an initial meeting. They might do an inventory where they would kind of evaluate their strengths and weaknesses of where they are. They would take maybe some classes to talk about the sacrament of marriage. They might meet with the priest individually to do that, or it's possible they might take some group classes to do that. They might also take classes on natural family planning. What does it mean to be open to the gift of human life? They would attend an engaged encounter retreat oftentimes. And all in all, that process, at minimum, has to take about 4 months, but it can take longer, and sometimes there are other things that couples have to work out before that happens. And every diocese, every parish, even every priest has a different way that they do marriage preparation. And so whatever diocese or parish that you're in, or that you want to get married or you want to do your preparation in, you just need to go to that parish and ask them what they do to make sure that you can follow all the steps that are required. And finally, in the United States, it's different in some other countries, but the sacramental marriage and the civil marriage happen at the same time, or can happen at the same time, because the priest is the chief witness. So once someone is married sacramentally, the priest can also sign the civil marriage license after the ceremony is over. So it's just a good thing to keep in mind, that you don't have to go and get married civilly first, that you can get married sacramentally and civilly at the same time. And so that's basically the process for if a guy discerns they want to go to seminary, if they're discerning marriage. It can sound like a lot of information, but I just wanted to kind of give some of that so that way people have that in their mind when they're considering these two options. So what I will go ahead and do is we'll post this final video. I'll also post a copy of all of the slides that I went through for these videos, so that way you can go ahead and take a look at them and reference them. There's some additional resources as one of the final slides if you're curious about any of these topics more in depth. And just know that whether you are with us or not, I will be praying for you in your discernment, whatever God is calling you to, that the Lord will lead you in the way that He wants you to go. And know that these rules can be very helpful for us in whatever decision that we have to make. Thank you for taking the time to watch these videos or be a part of this group, and may God bless you.